What's going on, everyone? I'm Pete B, and this is the Hokie Hoops podcast. I'm here with Ed Williams. Ed, what's going on, dude?
What's up, man? Excited. We're less than a week out from tip off, so it's exciting to sit down and kind of go through our predictions and our schedule analysis, all that good stuff. We might have Mike joining us at some point throughout the broadcast. We're recording this on Halloween, so he's got dad duty right now. But
Yes.
hopefully he can join us halfway through. But for now, man, it's just you and I. Let's kick it.
Less than a week away, man. We're like 4 days away. The
Yeah.
season kicks off on Monday. We're playing Delaware State on November 4th. And I'm excited because we do have a couple of games that we might be able to figure out what we're looking at. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight because this is our schedule prediction kind of thing. We already did our player preview. You guys can go back and listen to it. And yes, we did talk about what we perceive to be our starting point guard in Heiser Miller. Ed and I did a brief video. You can find it on the Sons of Saturday channel just about that situation. He's no longer with the team. If Mike hops in, we'll ask him for his comments on that. But I would recommend you go look to the video. It's a disappointment. That Ed had the same thought process as me, like another one of these right before the season things. Hey, but it's not as bad as what UVA is dealing with right now.
Yeah, the Tony Bennett situation is certainly interesting. I mean, look, man, like the sentiment from coaches around the country continues to sound the same, and Bennett was the first to really, really, truly act on it. I think Jay Wright may have been a little bit ahead of his time there. He might have seen the writing on the wall and got out early, but Bennett really acted on it at an odd time. But that's kind of just the general sentiment across the country, both in football and basketball, is guys who want to coach. That's not really what this is as much anymore, and
Yeah.
especially if you're going to do it at a program like UVA where you have national title aspirations, and it's a high stakes game now, and there's so much more involved in it than just coaching basketball and just developing kids. It's changed so much, and people who are critical of Tony Bennett, I challenge you to think, okay, if you were to walk into work tomorrow and all of a sudden your boss hands you 10 new roles and responsibilities, would you not go home and pop open LinkedIn and maybe look around and see what else is out there? So,
Yeah, because
fortunately,
Tony Bennett could do television. He could do a lot of different things. Maybe AD. Who knows what is in his future? But it the responsibilities have changed. But I think there is that middle point where it's like, well, yeah, but you're getting paid a lot of money to do those responsibilities. But it's not necessarily what some of these coaches who've been coaching for a long time signed up for, right? Things have changed a lot with the portal and just straight up guys asking for money when they come on a visit and all those different kind of things. And so in the immediate short term though, Ed, like Tony Bennett not being on our schedule is a good thing for Virginia Tech.
yeah, it was kind of weird when I was looking through, going through our document before this, thinking about which games I'm excited for. My normal default would have been UVA. Those coaching matchups between Coach Young and Bennett. I think we've split almost every season that Mike Young's been in Blacksburg with them. We've split
And
that
even if you
series.
go back to Buzz, I feel like we
Yeah,
split most years.
yeah, it's been a really good chess match of X's and O's coaching and different styles going against one another. So that no longer being the case now, obviously UVA in the short term this year with Coach Sanchez is going to run the same stuff for the most part. So I guess it will look probably somewhat similar, but it's not the same without Tony Bennett on the opposite side.
No, it's definitely a loss for the ACC just in terms
Definitely.
of the hierarchy of coaches. I'm just trying to think with UNC and Duke both changing over their coaches in the past 3 to 5 years. Bennett was, you look at who's the best coach in the ACC. It was probably Tony Bennett, right? Like John Shire might get there. Who's the coach at UNC? I'm just like blanking on his name right now, but like he may get there as well. But yeah, it was Tony and just a couple of other guys. And so I do want to double back real quick to the point guard role because with no Miller, Ed, before we get into the schedule, it's hard to break down the schedule if you don't know who's going to be running the offense. And you love Ben Hammond and you love his game. Do you think that he'll start, or do you think it'll be one of the guys we already have on hand?
No, I think it'll be Brandon Rechsteiner. I think you'll see, and not to put pressure on him or anything like that, but I think you'll see that freshman to sophomore jump in a big way for him. I think you would have seen that regardless of Miller's presence on the team. I think you'd see a lot more B Rock anyway because Coach Young talked about him with the media. Having to find ways to get him on the floor even before Miller left because he might be our best shooter. So now you're just going to see him with the ball in his hand more. He's a guy I was really excited about coming out of high school. Pretty much limitless range for Brandon Rechsteiner. And the game was just too fast for him at times last year. And, the hope now would be that it's slowed down a little bit. And I think we'll
Yeah.
see some of that. And I think he gets the bulk of the point guard minutes. And then depending on Ben Hammond's readiness, he's either your backup point guard or you find a way to piecemeal it together when B Rock needs to take a breath. But I expect Ben to be ready to play spot minutes. And I think Brandon will take the lion's share of the point guard role.
The nice thing with Rechsteiner is I don't think he lacks the strength to play at this time. Like he probably could have played it, in terms of physicality last year, but now he's definitely ready. And the range you're talking about, like that's necessary. Like
Mhm.
this team needs shooting, and he might be our best shooter. So him starting, that's an upgrade in shooting at that position from what we were expecting from Heiser Miller. Now we thought in Mike Young's system, Miller's stroke could be better, but he struggled mightily in just the field goal percentage department last year. Rechsteiner should be, when it comes to threes, hopefully closer to 40%. When it comes to twos, and step backs and that kind of thing, we're closer to 45. And I'm going to get that out of Miller.
Yeah. I think the shooting ability, you're right. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's definitely something that Brandon had over Miller anyway. And now we'll see if he can handle the rest of it, the physicality, the speed, the running the
Defense,
show, the
like
ACC. Yeah, defense, big part of it. So well, I think you're going to see really positive strides from him. And I think the early part of that schedule will play a huge role in that too as we build towards ACC play. But I'm very excited to watch him play, and I think you will see some Ben Hammond as well.
definitely, absolutely. And I think with Ben Hammond, do you remember when J. Rob was a freshman?
Hmm.
And at the beginning of the year, he didn't play so much. And then as the year went on, he became more and more of a factor. Same thing with Padula when he was a freshman. Like that's kind of what I'm envisioning for Hammond, but it might be like at hyperdrive because we might
Yeah,
just need him a little bit more.
yeah,
And
I
he
could
might,
see that. I don't know how well J Rob came in at a time where we had Seth Allen, and you could play the two of them together. I don't see a world you can play Brandon and Ben together.
okay.
I think you'd be really limited defensively just because of the size of the two of them. But I do expect him to play, and I don't think the game will be too fast for him. That's for sure. Coming from PBI and the level he played at, the guys he played with and against, I don't think that speed will be an issue. Um, so we'll see how it unfolds, but excited about both of them, man.
Yeah,
Sophomore
man.
and freshman. So building something there in the point guard room.
I hope so. Let's get to the schedule. Let's just get right into it, man. Out of conference, we're going to start there and then we'll go to ACC a little bit later. There's some fun games here.
Yeah.
Now, we do have, I think the first three games you would classify as like tune up games because we start with Delaware State, then it's Jacksonville, A&T, like along with Winthrop and a couple of other teams. Like we have three games in a row. And before we get to a couple more fun ones, when
Mhm.
you look at that out of conference schedule, what are the games that like get you the most excited?
I mean, the first one that jumps off the page is Penn State and Baltimore. That's kind of your first real test. That's kind of where we'll see. Okay, what is this team as it pertains to big boy basketball? Because you said couple tune ups there to start it out, and then you go up to Baltimore and you play a Penn State team that's building something. I like the direction of that Penn State program. Um, you know, Transparently, with the way we kind of hit the hard reset button in terms of our roster, their roster might be ahead of ours in some ways, and I'll get to more of that later.
Because
But
they picked up, they lost their coach to Notre Dame, correct?
mhm,
Like 2 years ago. So this is the second year for their new coach. So they're
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
yeah.
So they're building a program, and in some ways they might be ahead of us in terms of that because of the way we had to reset our roster. So
Mhm.
That's gonna be an interesting one. I'm kind of tempted to go to that. We'll see how it goes, but that's
I
kind
want
of
to
the first
go.
one that jumps off the page.
Like that Baltimore game should be fun. Ace Baldwin is a player to watch from Penn State. He's CBS, a bunch of publications have put out their top 100 college basketball players for this year. And we play a lot of those top 100 in the ACC and otherwise. But Penn State has a guy named Ace Baldwin who is going to test us. That's for sure. He's in the top 50 of the top 100 players to watch.
Yeah, he's a really good player. And then after Penn State, um, St. Joe's is a cool one just because of the atmosphere that that'll be played in. I think that's a really cool one that sticks
I'm
out.
trying to go to that game. My buddy just bought tickets. It's at the Palestra in Philadelphia. It's where Penn plays. Historic place. I probably mentioned on the last show. Tickets are a little pricey. They're like if you buy them from the Palestra, they're even more expensive. I think on secondary market they're a little bit cheaper, but I'm gonna wait and just kind of see what happens. But I'm gonna definitely try to go. The Palestra is an amazing venue in college basketball, and St.
Yeah,
Joe's has a proud history. They're not an amazing team, but they've got a good history as a basketball program.
yeah, that one's really cool just for, like I said, the kind of the atmosphere around it. But before that, down in Fort Myers, we've got Michigan first, and then either South Carolina or Xavier, and those are all really interesting programs. South Carolina, obviously, coming off of a surprise big season last year.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier is an interesting program to keep an eye on throughout the year as things unfold, and then Michigan, with Dusty May now coming up
Yeah.
from FAU, no more Jawan Howard in Ann Arbor. So
They needed to
Michigan,
get rid of
it's a
Jawan Howard.
retooled and it's a new look retooled Michigan team. They will not be at the bottom of the Big Ten this year with Dusty May and what he was able to bring in. So that's going to be a really tough test. That's the first one that's like, okay, this could be a tournament team we're playing. I mean, Penn State could be
Mhm.
as well, but Dusty May's a really good coach, and they brought in a lot of new faces in Michigan.
They
So that's a
brought
really
that
good.
kid from FAU that went to the Final Four, Vlad Golden, I think his name is, and he's
Yeah.
another kid that we're gonna have to look out for. So that was one of Dusty May's, like you said, um, carryovers from his previous program. You know which one I'm watching, Ed? Is Vanderbilt. And
Mhm.
that Vandy game in the ACC SEC challenge, forget about the ACC Big Ten challenge, even though we are playing a Big Ten team in Penn State, Vanderbilt has two of our players, man. They,
Yeah.
they got two of our guys from last year, guys we liked, right? Like we like Tyler Nickel, we like MJ Collins, and now they're playing for a team that gave us a hard time on the football field.
Yeah, that one's the schedulers had fun with that. That one's gonna be interesting, man. Tyler Nickel and MJ Collins coming back to Castle Coliseum. Yeah, two guys that I know, we liked as fans, and yeah, I was really excited about Tyler Nichols' trajectory as a player. And Vandy was tasked by the SEC to go splash some of that TV money around, and they did
Yeah.
it. So they got a whole new roster down there, man, and new coaching staff and everything. So new look Vandy basketball, new look Vandy athletics as a whole, it would appear in the year 2024. So yeah, that one's interesting for so many reasons.
So when you're looking, the toughest game on that has to be Michigan, I guess, in theory, but we don't really know what we're gonna get. That is Xavier team is good.
Hmm.
And if we end up playing Xavier, that could be a problem. Even South Carolina, you talked about them a little bit. I think that's more beatable. I think we're gonna struggle against Michigan, even with new situation. And Xavier, I think we're gonna struggle. Another proud program in basketball. Let's kind of predict through here because I'm looking at the first three games. Those should all be W's. If we don't get three W's right off the bat against Delaware State, USC Upstate, and Winthrop, then we have major problems. But I'm going down the line. I think Michigan's a loss. I think this is a win. Blah 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 blah. 11 games if you include that or of Xavier and South Carolina. I think best case is 8-3. That's my best case. It's probably more likely 7-4.
That's exactly what I wrote down.
Okay.
7-4, 8-3, and I think depending on how things look against Penn State, we'll have a pretty good idea of how the rest of that non-con is going to go down. With that being the first real test. Also, don't sleep on Navy coming into Castle. That one's kind of cool.
I that's a fun game. It's very cool, and they're coming to Castle. they're not projected to be very good.
No, they're not, but it's just interesting. And I always like, when I was looking at this, I'm like, okay, Penn State neutral site, St. Joe's, I guess technically neutral site, Fort Myers, all that's neutral site. So the one big test out of conference is Vandy, and we have that one at home. So that's kind of where I
Yeah,
was like, well, maybe 8-3, but I completely agree with you. I think 8-3 is best case. 7-4 probably most realistic. But again, well, we'll see how Penn State looks,
kind of
and then we can go from there. But I think 8-3 is in play.
definitely. I do think that. And remember, well, you said this earlier today. This is kind of a Mike Young year one again. Like
Mhm.
he's kind of starting all over again. And in his first year, he got us a surprising out of conference win.
Yeah,
And was that in Hawaii? I'm trying to
yeah, in
remember what.
Hawaii, in Hawaii
Yeah.
against Michigan State, that was really fun to watch on TV.
So maybe we will take down Michigan. Maybe we will get both Penn State and Vanderbilt. It is. I didn't actually think about the fact that those guys are coming back to Castle. That's going to be
Yeah,
kind of a cool moment when both those guys are back. So we'll finish that like that out of conference. That's what it is. Well, on an optimistic side, we'll go 8-3 in ACC play. Let me first. I'll put up the ACC media poll because this is what the media thinks. And now we just did this in football, Ed, and Florida State was 1 or 2 in the ACC media poll in football, and that's not how it turned out. So take these rankings with a grain of salt, but this is all we have to go off of right now for the most part. You can look at KenPom, you can look here, you can look a lot of different places, but Duke is number 1, North Carolina 2, and Wake 3. After that, you've got a couple of teams that have been good lately in Clemson, Virginia, and Miami, and then Pitt, which last year with Pitt, they're number 7 projected this year. They really shocked me last season. I thought Capel was done. And just like football with Narduzzi, they had a surprisingly good year.
yeah. Capel's held his own. He's held onto that job, like you said, longer than I thought he would. But man, I look up and down this list, and it's like we talked about this in a group chat. Like Ken Palm ratings. How can you how what am I supposed to take from those when the whole roster for every single one of these teams is new?
There's
I'm
no
looking
way to
at
know.
Virginia's got a new coach. Louisville's got a new coach. All it's just so much change year over year in college
Like
basketball.
Louisville's projected 9 in this poll.
Yeah,
And
and I'm
for the
high on
people who
Louisville.
can't like see it, and they could be 4,
Yeah, 100%.
they
Yeah,
should be so much better than last year. And last year they were what, 8, the last place. I mean,
mhm,
they've been god awful for 2 seasons.
yeah.
But that coach is really good who they just
Oh yeah,
hired.
oh yeah. College of Charleston. I mean, they've done nothing but win down there. And he comes over to Louisville, and a job that should always be a good job, and I think will be moving forward. So I look around, and yeah, like you talked about earlier, and I was going to touch on this a little bit, but you lose Tony Bennett, but then you add some real coaching at Louisville. Notre Dame is on the uptick. You should see their 2025 recruiting class. My goodness. So there's a lot of really good basketball and programs being built in this league. But again, man, I just have such a hard time um, with any of this preseason stuff because there's just so much new. Now, the one thing I will say, um,
Especially with number 1, right? Like
well,
Duke is based off of Cooper Flag and at least one other freshman. And
uh,
like,
that's where I was about to go. Was to
okay,
do
sorry.
they're going to be ridiculously good.
Okay.
They are going to be really good. Did you see what they did to Arizona State in that charity scrimmage the other day?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, murder on national television on a charity scrimmage. They're going to be a problem, man. They got Tyrese Proctor back. You mentioned Cooper Flag, Con Kneppel shooting the ball on the outside. They're going to be insanely good. I'm really high on this year's Duke team, and John Shire continues to just reload. So really high on them. North Carolina really good. Clemson, I have questions. Wake Forest, I kind of have questions, mostly because Clemson, I question coaching, even though they did really well last year.
Well,
Wake
it's always,
Forest,
yeah, with Clemson, you always think they're one step away from
yeah,
firing the coach, and then they have a good season. And
yeah.
it's just like, okay, I guess they're good. North Carolina, to comment on them, like RJ Davis, still in school.
Still in
he's
college.
he's he's still there, man. This is year 5. He's using his COVID year, and
Good for
he's
him.
good. And so they're going to be good. They obviously have other good players as well. But Wake Forest, They got the surprising year out of Salas last year. He is now, I mean, it's amazing how high he is in some of these like mock drafts or just best player in college basketball. Like he's in the top 10 in some of these projections of like the best players in college basketball, which I didn't see coming because he was at Gonzaga for 2 years. If you didn't know, he transfers over to Wake Forest and scores 18, 19 points a games last year. And now is it gonna be 20? Is it gonna be 22 a game? Like they have I like their coach. I like Forbes. I think they
I did too.
warrant being this high in the preseason poll, but it's still Wake and they haven't been elite in a long time. And so it's a little bit of a prove it to me kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I'll comment on this slide one more time before we move on. But I think if I'm going to take one team from the left hand column and put them over on the right hand column and vice versa, NC State's bouncing down quite a few slots. I'm not, the Cinderella run. I mean, that dude's seat was on fire, and then he pulled a rabbit out of his hat. I'm going to move them over to the right hand side, and a
Okay.
team to watch out for. And I've seen it in football. SMU, man, watch out for SMU. Andy Enfield
Ooh.
comes over there. They print cash, and cash matters more than anything else right now in college athletics. So watch out for SMU. I'm curious to see how their season unfolds.
They've been trying different things at SMU for a long time. They had Larry Brown as their coach. Shake Milton had a nice year for them several years back and then became a Sixer. They come to Castle this year, which isn't on my
Mm-hmm.
list as like a game I'm particularly
Wait, do
excited
they?
about or anything. Was that?
Oh yeah, they do. They do.
They
Sorry, I
do.
was thinking of the other two new
It's
ACC
not a
schools that go to.
Saturday game, but they
Yeah,
do come to Castle, which is kind of funny. But
yeah.
yeah, I didn't actually I'm hoping they're not that great because I'd like to beat them. But yeah, we are on the right side of the column. If you don't know, Virginia Tech came in at 14 in the 2024 ACC preseason media poll, just ahead of Florida State, Cal, Stanford, and BC. So let's go to the schedule, and I'll pull this off the screen as we kind of chat here. The best home games and best, or why don't we start at like which home games are you looking forward to? Because best is, that could be like the best teams or what you want to see. And I think we want to talk about what we want to see. What are you excited about the teams coming into Castle?
Home game wise, Pitt, the first one. I'm very interested to see. At that point, we'll have a pretty good idea of who we are, and where we might be able to punch up and where we might not be able to punch up, and what we are as a team this year. I think by Pitt, we'll have a good idea, but we'll really get tested in the first ACC game. I like that our first ACC game, that random one that's kind of in the middle or the back end of non-con. I like that ours is at least at home.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
I'm a big fan of that. And then outside of them, I mean, like I said earlier, UVA is one that I always would circle, and I still will, obviously, because it's a rivalry. But North Carolina coming to Castle, I think, is probably the biggest game that jumps off at you because Duke doesn't come in this year.
Yeah.
So I'll
And
go pick Carolina and UVA, the home games I guess most looking forward to.
I'm really excited about that Wake game. I, I think because it's on a Saturday, it, it may be Martin Luther King Day weekend. So maybe a 3-day weekend. Uh, they're beatable. They're very good, but they're beatable. The problem with Wake is they've given us a ton of crap the last couple years. Like
Yeah,
we seem to have a problem beating them, but I still think that's what I'm excited about. I love Clemson coming in on a Saturday in late January. That's fun. So we're getting back-to-back Saturday home games in January, which if you follow Virginia Tech basketball, I feel like so often we don't get enough of these Saturday home games against the ACC teams. I feel like we're
it does
constantly
seem that
traveling
way. It does seem
and
that
we
way.
get like a home game on Tuesday night or something, which we also have that. That's UNC is a Tuesday. So yes, I'm looking forward to it. The reason I think we could win that UNC game, maybe Ed, is because it's probably the last game before they play Duke at the end of the year. Because it's March 4th. And I think there's only one more game after that. So I think their very next game would be Duke. So maybe we could kind of get them in a sleepy spot or something like that. I want to talk about some of the tougher games on the schedule. There's we play a couple teams twice, and one of those teams is Miami, which you want to talk about having problems with a certain team. That stinks. That's one of our double ups. And then Clemson too, because that's definitely one of the better teams in the conference. And we always play UVA twice. So hopefully we can split that one. But getting Clemson and Miami as the double ups, because there's so many teams now, you don't get as many as you used to. That's unfortunate. I would have rather gotten a BC twice or something like that.
I'll actually take it because, I mean, yeah, you know that BC. But as far as the draw it could have been, I'll take those two because I think we have a coaching edge in both those matchups.
Okay.
I think Miami will have a quote unquote better roster on paper, like they always will. Um,
Nigel Pack's back again.
and Lynn Kidd is down there now too,
And
so
Len Kidd.
that'll be interesting. But I always feel like we're definitely not outmatched in the coaching department in either of those games from an X's and O's standpoint. And I think we can find a way to do okay with those as your repeat customers.
We only played Duke once, and
Yeah, thank God.
unfortunately, it's in Cameron.
That's fine. Just
Just get it
play
out of
it.
the way.
Just play it and move on.
We got to go to UVA on February 1st. And then we have to go the Clemson game. That's our last game of the year. So if you look at the UNC game at home and then the Clemson game away, like that's tough because those are our last two season games. And like they're probably both losses. Like that's our last best chance to win. And this was another game I was excited about is Syracuse. March 1st, Saturday in the Berg. And it's probably our last best chance at a W. Before the tournament, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so like I said, it's so hard to know who's going to be good. Like I have no idea what Clemson's going to be this year. I have
Did
no
you
real idea of who Syracuse is anymore. Louisville could be still crappy, or they could be a completely different team that you won't even recognize from the last 3 seasons. So just so much up in the air, and we'll learn a lot in the first month of the season. But um, overall, I think the usual suspects are the ones you're most excited about. It's the Carolinas, it's the Dukes, and UVA. But yeah, I am kind of glad that the Duke one's early and we can get it out of the way, and we only have them once because, like I said, I expect a really good year from them.
And yeah, maybe they're not firing all cylinders before the new year. Just maybe, but they probably will be. Did you notice that when and where we play Cal and Stanford, we've got to like go
Yeah,
out to the West Coast, play both of those teams within a couple days, which makes sense because you don't want
right.
to have to. But neither of those teams are projected to be very good, and we have to play both of them on the road. That to me is like that could be two losses that could have been two wins. That's why I find that a little frustrating.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, I guess this is how they have to handle these. I mean, like, I guess there's no real way around it. Like, I would assume that this means, you
Like
know,
if you play one of them away, you have to play both of them away, kind of
yeah,
thing.
I would assume. I guess that makes sense. It's just, nothing like the Atlantic Coast Conference being able to see the Pacific Ocean from your campus. Welcome to college athletics.
Did you see that Cal has Stephon Marbury the second?
No, that's cool. I used to wear his shoes growing up. Yeah, I loved
He,
his basketball shoes.
dude, for the kids that don't know about Marbury, man, he was a phenomenon. Like, I'm not sure he was ever as good as his hype, but like he was a big freaking deal. He
Yeah, he
really
was.
was.
He was.
And yeah, his son though, I don't think he was like a high recruit, but he is playing for Cal
That's
this
cool.
this year. So we take that all into account, Ed. I talked about Wake in the Castle, Clemson, UVA, Syracuse, UNC. What do you think is like, if we're going to make a statement, have a big upset, who do you think is like more upsettable this year? Like a Clemson at home or a Wake at home?
Clemson at home. Um, I've always liked how we match up with Clemson, even in years we haven't been great. And I mean, even
We had
last
some
year we had a
dogfights with
good game.
them last year.
Yeah, I mean, even last year's good game. So I'd say Clemson, mostly
Yeah.
because they don't have a Hunter Salas, but I'd say Clemson. And then other teams who I think are projected to finish pretty high that we could have a good chance of knocking off. I mean, I guess it depends what you think of UVA now. I mean, I know on the graphic you showed they're projected to be fifth. Um, I guess it depends how high people are still on
The
them.
Pitt game, right? That could be
Yeah, I
one.
mean Pitt again. I like the coaching edge we have there. NC State, I certainly like the coaching edge we have there.
We got NC State at home.
So again, it's just hard to know who we are. Like you said, and I wanted to dive into this a little bit more. So, like the comp to Mike Young year one makes a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons. So many new faces. You have one guy back on the roster who has played meaningful basketball at this level. Back then, it was Wabisa Bede. Now it's Malaja Poteet. And then you have a lot of unknowns and a lot of new faces. So, it'll depend on how quickly this team is able to gel. I think there's some really good talent on this team, and I think we'll get into this more with our final, overall thoughts. But um, it feels a lot like a year one scenario where we just slam the reset button to build
Yep.
for another run of however many years. But you notice, all the guys we brought in from the portal are multiple years of eligibility kind of guys outside of Hyzer Miller, who's no longer here anyway. So yeah, it's a very interesting place to be. But overall, I like the talent we have. It'll just be a question of how quick can the talent get up to speed with not only what we're trying to do, but also how you have to win in this league.
It's so true. And you're talking about the unknowns. And when you're trying to do one of these shows where you're previewing the season and making projections, you can't just always fall back on the idea of like, well, who knows what'll happen. Like you're trying to
Yeah,
make an educated opinion, and that's what me and Ed are doing here tonight. And I'm looking at it and the variance of like our win total. There's a lot of variance here because I'll use the Hunter Salas example. He comes over. He's playing 15 minutes a game for Gonzaga, not doing a whole lot. He became an all ACC caliber kid. And what could that be? Rodney Brown? Could that be Ben Burnham? Could that be Toby Lawal? Like Jaden Young, even guys that are currently on the roster, Brandon Rexsteiner. I'm banking on the fact that Mike Young is a good enough coach that one of these kids is like, holy crap, we've got a player. Like when Kivaluma came in, Keve, I should say. When Keve came in, we didn't know exactly what we're going to get, but it's like, oh man, this kid can ball. And we had a leading scorer like almost right off the bat. That's what I'm not banking on it, but I'm pushing some of my chips in on it that we're gonna discover is like, oh crap, this guy can play, and maybe it's Poteet too, because I expect big things out of Malajal, and we're gonna need him this year because of the front court depth.
yeah, I expect a big year out of Malaja as well. Completely revamped his body. Is in a really good place, and I think I've always thought he was
Is it better
somewhat
than Billy Ray's body in the
underappreciated.
hot tub, the cold tub?
Dude, that video
That
is
was
out of
funny as shit.
control. That video is completely out of control. But yeah, I mean, he comes in a really good place, and I've always thought that there were, and I think most people would kind of agree, there were games last year and in his career as a Hokie where he's been the better of the two centers that played for us that night. So I think his ceiling's a little bit higher than people think it is, and I'm excited about him. But like you mentioned, Keve, kind of an unknown. Well, you got a former top 100 recruit, and Jaden Shute comes in. Um, who knows? Does it click for him? Is he that guy?
And
So
that's a better corollary to Salas too, because you're talking about a high-end program guy. Like he came from Duke, he's got skills. You don't just get on the Duke roster for no reason. And Salas was on Gonzaga. And
yeah,
so Shoot could come in and just blow people away. And then your
yeah,
Ken Palm rating goes from 98 to 75 in a week and a half.
yeah.
It is very hard to know. So let's get to our ACC record predictions. We play 20 games in the ACC these days. It's hard to believe we play that many conference games, but we do. What is the floor number of wins for you?
Oh, in the ACC,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the floor is. I wrote down 8-12 as my prediction.
Okay. All
In,
right.
in conference, and the ACC, it's razor thin margins. There's a couple of those go your way. All of a sudden, you're 10-10. But vice versa, like you could be 6-14. I'd say anywhere from 6 to 10 wins is probably the range. So I'll stick with that 8-12 record prediction, which for me would put us at 16-15 on the year. right in line with kind of what year one was for Coach Young.
It was, yeah. So I have 8 and 12 written down, but that wasn't my floor. That was my final kind of I'm banking on Coach Young getting us an extra couple wins because if I'm just looking at the roster and looking what we got to play,
Mm-hmm.
it looks more like 6 or 7. But I think we'll get to 8, and then that means for me we're finishing it's 14 or 15 wins for me, somewhere right in there.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. And again, we could we could play that Penn State game, look amazing, and you and I are like, wow, we really should have predicted 18 wins. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. But
Right.
I think with
It
the
it
level of coaching we have mixed with the level of talent we've brought in, it's really a matter of how quickly do the pieces come together. And I think our around 500 record predictions are super reasonable.
when we were doing the player preview and I'm not looking at our schedule, I'm like, "Oh yeah, we'll get to 17, 18, 19 wins." And it's like, "No. It's like it's going to be a challenge." If we were to make the tournament, Mike Young is ACC coach of the year. Not only because of losing a point guard right before the year, but like we have depth problems up front in the front court. And we don't know what we're going to get out of these wings. Now, if Jaden Shoot is killing it and Jaden Young takes a step forward and Toby Lawal becomes the rim running big we need and Ben Burnham can do everything to be the glue guy that we want, well, then, yeah, maybe we can win 18 or 19 games and be a bubble team. But a lot of things have to go right for that, including Ben Hammond playing minutes and playing well as a true freshman. And so, unfortunately, we could be looking at around a 500 team. But Ed, I am more excited to watch this team than I was for last year.
Yeah, I am too, because you're more likely than not going to see all three freshmen. Um, Ben Hammond's going to play. Tyler Johnson is going to play a ton. Tyler Johnson's a really exciting player. We haven't really talked about him much
No, we
tonight.
haven't. You're right.
He's a really exciting player, and he wasn't even the highest rated one of the bunch. RJ Jones can absolutely rip it from the outside as a 4 or 5 hybrid type player. I think he'll come along as the season progresses as well, and you'll look up and you'll have 3 freshmen and 2 sophomores on the floor, and it's like, oh my god, what's going on? But yeah, I think we've got the returners, quote unquote, that are poteet, and I guess I'll give you Jaden Young because he played a little bit as the season progressed last year. I think those guys take steps up in their game, and then all the guys you mentioned, Toby Lawal, Jaden Shoot, Ben Burnham, the freshmen. How do all these pieces fit together? And the sooner we answer those questions, the sooner we can chase down what we think our ceiling might be, which could be in that 18, 19 win territory.
And because it's a year one for Mike Young, and because of some of the things we've seen with talented younger players leaving the program, maybe we will see more of those freshmen in the first couple games that are not against top competition.
I think you
Kind of
will out
doubt
of
it.
necessity in some cases. Like Tyler Johnson's going to play.
Maybe.
Tyler
Okay.
Johnson's going to play. I think he would have played on last year's team and probably would have played on the team from the year prior to that. I mean,
Is he physically like ready?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing that jumps out when you look at his high school tape is he looks the part in high school. Super high motor, can do a lot of good things for you. Can guard a couple different positions, so I think he'll play a lot. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch.
That's what I thought about RJ too. I thought physically he can probably handle it. Now you
Yeah,
get into
I
ACC
think he'll
play,
play
could be
too.
tougher, but he's there, man. He's got a big frame.
He's going to play, and he can really shoot the ball.
Okay. Yeah, that's exciting to have a guy that tall. What is he, 6'8"?
Yeah, he's like 6'8".
Yeah, and he can shoot like he can. Like his development is going to be really fun. So
Yep.
hopefully we'll see those guys early. Well, I think that's about it, Ed. Do you have any final comments, or is that about all we wanted to handle today? Because we did do a part one where we talked a lot more. I don't know if X's and O's is the right word, but a lot more court layout type stuff and just how the guys will fit together. And then tonight was more of the schedule. But maybe I'll see you in Baltimore. That's
Yeah.
our football bye week, by the way, too, for the
Yeah.
listeners. Like if you're looking for something to do on the bye week, head to Baltimore. I think is it Friday night?
Yeah. It's a
Might be a
Friday night.
Friday night. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick, I guess I'll throw up one question at you. So my final prediction is 16 and 15.
Okay.
I'm gonna go team MVP for the year, Jaden Shoot. Freshman of the year, Tyler Johnson. I'm curious your thoughts on those 2 questions as well.
Yeah. The shoot thing is something that you and Mike are a little higher than me on. I think it's going to be Burnham. Like, or did you say newcomer or did you say play like MVP, team MVP?
Team MVP and
Yeah.
freshman of the year. So
Freshman.
I guess
Yes.
I'm limiting you to the three guys there.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be Burnham. I really like his game. I know there's a little bit more upside for sure with shoot, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Burnham will be our MVP. And then freshman of the year, I hope that it's Hammond. That I'll say that. I'll just go with Hammond. I think he'll be our freshman like guy of the year.
Yeah,
I think
I
he'll
think
get the what we've both heard about him already, like has me excited.
yeah, I mean you're going to see all three of them, which is going to be exciting.
Yeah.
The one last thing I'll touch on, then we can wrap, is Saturday before. Who did we just play in football? I'm blanking completely.
Who do we
Georgia
just play?
Tech.
We played Georgia Tech, yeah.
Saturday before Georgia Tech. I know Pete, you were there, but the Trilly Donovan tweeted out the final score of our scrimmage against JMU.
Oh yeah.
It was the final score itself was ugly. I'm not going to sit here and tell you like I just predicted 16 and 15, right? So I'm not sitting here telling you to ignore that final score entirely. But I will say that I did some serious internet sleuthing and was able to uncover a little bit more about that box score, and it's there's more to it than just the final score. I think Virginia Tech was very experimental in terms of lineup rotations, and when we were treating it kind of more like a full game and a real game, I think the score was much better than maybe that final score lets on. So no reason to super alarm the whole fan
because
base
if
with
you do
that.
have diehards listening, yeah, we want to
Yeah,
make sure like don't be so alarmed. But JMU, they were good last year.
yeah,
They're not any kind of they were better than us last year. They like I would assume. I don't know. We didn't play them head to head, but it would have been a good game. And so, yeah. But you saw that score come across, and you're like, ooh,
yeah.
that wasn't so good.
There's more going on there than to meets the eye. So just everybody
It's an
can,
exhibition for a reason.
yeah, we're trying lineups, we're trying different things, and I wouldn't read too much into the leaked score that came across the timeline on Saturday.
Trilly Donovan. Yeah. Uh, I forget who it was that it might have even been you. Like there was a lot of people talking about the Bennett retirement thing during the year last year. And Trilly might have been one of them. And lo and behold, he didn't pull the rip card after the season, but he did right before the actual season this year. So there was a lot of people calling for that or like saying there was some weird stuff going on with the coach from Charlotte coming to UVA. And well, there you have it. He's gone now, which is I still find it hard to believe.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. It seemed a little bit calculated. He's got the money to go retire, so good for him.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Make sure you're subscribed to the Sons of Saturday feed on any of your apps that you use for podcasts, and also Sons of Saturday channel on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're watching, you just make sure you like the video. We need your likes. And I know a lot of people that tend to watch the channel. You're not subscribed. So if you're still listening and you're here, hit the subscribe button and we'd much appreciate it. And until next time, Ed, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.